This episode of the CUInsight Experience is brought to you by Elan Credit Card. Elan partners with more than 250 credit unions to provide an outsourced credit card program. Welcome to episode 146 of the show. I'm Randy Smith, one of the co-founders of CUInsight.com, and I'm excited you're all here today. This show is all about taking a deep dive with the leaders of the credit union movement that make it so great. Today, I am having a conversation with Tansley Stearns. Tansley is the president and CEO of Community Financial Credit Union in Michigan and a return guest on the show. Tansley, I think it was episode 36 you were on as well. So let's just jump right in. Tansley, welcome to the show, my friend. I'm so excited for you to be here.
I'm thrilled to be here. And there's something about the number 6 that works, evidently.
Right, I guess so for us. So what's new since the last time?
Yes, I just turned my life on its head.
Absolutely. Well, I have to start by saying congratulations on the CEO gig. I was so excited when I heard that you got it. And you get, I mean, as a bonus, you get to go back home to Michigan where you and I are both from. So how does it feel? How was that feeling when you got the news that you got that gig?
Yeah, so it's really special. I know that I've told you and many in our industry that this is a 20-year-long dream for me, and I've spent a lot of time really piecing together a path towards this. So it's really exciting. And to your point, you know, when I took the phone call from Jill, who you know very well, about the conversation to even interview, part of what she said to me was, you know, I know how much you want to do this. I know you're not looking necessarily. And here's a shop with a board that cares about human beings in a state that you love. So you probably should at least talk about it. And that was the beginning of getting here.
I think Jill actually sent me a selfie of the two of you in the Detroit airport after you found out, all excited. So that was amazing. Okay. Personal question on this one.
Yeah.
But what was your mom's reaction to you coming home?
So thrilled. You know, it's funny. You know, I think both my parents, obviously they care about me deeply and love me. And I do think for both of them, my life has been very surprising in a lot of ways. I'm not sure they ever thought my daughter's going to be the president of a credit union. And, you know, I think they are oozing with pride. And I think that they also are beyond thrilled to have me in Michigan. And they can drive 90 minutes and see me, and more importantly, see my daughter.
Right. That is fantastic. So you mentioned a 20-year path to this point, right? To the CEO chair, the president and CEO chair. For a little background, for those who don't know you, you know, where'd the career start? How'd you get to where you are today?
Absolutely. So began really in happenstance when I graduated from the University of Michigan, which I now only live 20 minutes away from.
It'll be a fun football season for you.
Without question. Hopefully, fingers crossed. So, you know, I really didn't have a path, and I just simply wanted to get a job. And I was applying for both social work and marketing gigs. And I got an interview at a credit union that's just up the road, used to be. They've been merged subsequently, and it was for a marketing specialist job. And I didn't think I'd be there for more than a year. I just wanted to have a paycheck and be able to pay for my own rent.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I fell in love pretty quickly. And it was a very special organization. The person in front of me, his name was John Normando. He was a CPA. He's a wonderful man and really knew something that has been such an important lesson for me, which is how critical it is to have somebody around you that's very different than you. You know, he was a CPA, he was a numbers guy, the finance guy, very conservative, and he wanted a storyteller and a marketer and somebody that could drive sales. And so I had the chance to not only begin in marketing, but then to run branches and then to eventually be the VP of Sales and Service. So I was wearing all kinds of hats, including lending and the contact center. And that opportunity to lead across the organization was really, it made such an impact on me because I got to see the world from the members' eyes, which has been an important part of how I got to, I think, understand the why behind all of what we do. And so I spent 9 years there and then had the opportunity to take a very similar role at a larger shop in Connecticut, where you are these days. And I was there for about 6 years. And then I went to Bethpage on Long Island and I did strategy and government relations work there. And then I was at the Filene Research Institute for 6 years and flew all over this great country, helping credit unions with strategy and innovation and their member journey. And most recently was with Canvas and helped them transform from public service credit union to Canvas, and also wore the HR hat and the strategy hat and the retail hat. And now here I am. So
now here you are.
I think
and ready.
Yes. Well, and that was, I think, to your question, I had a lot of really great mentors, and I'm very grateful to them. And they were all very, very helpful in sharing that people would see me because I started in marketing as the person who only knew how to draw pictures. And
right. I'm sorry, but I'm absolutely loving it. And it seems like it's changed over the past. I love marketers, quite honestly. And it seems like, I mean, just since you and I have been in the space, we are seeing a lot more people that got their start in marketing move, I mean, and I think you're seeing, you probably, I'm sure with Canvas and where you are now and everything, like seeing marketers have like that real seat at the table also, as far as like being in the C-suite, not just being like, oh, that's cute, you do pictures. And so, yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. I think part of what's changed is that our industry is starting to see that marketing is not just something that we do in good times and when we have resources, but it's a business partner that drives growth for the organization. And we have to have that be something that we are investing in fully and robustly.
Another thing that I've noticed over the past few years that's changed is, that so many of the applications we are using in a digital banking side really tie so much into marketing where like they almost don't fall into the tech side anymore, right? Like it's not IT.
Yes.
Yeah. It's an interesting change that I think, it's, I guess, cool to see happening. Let me ask you, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, but you mentioned mentors. And I mean, I know personally in my life that they've been fantastic to help me grow and get where I am. Can you speak on the mentors, I guess, that have helped you get to where you are today? And also, how on the flip side of that, how are you now that you're here? Like, one of the things I want to ask you about is like, we want to talk about the journey today, right? For that person who's out there, maybe they're in the C-suite today and they're like, ooh, I want to be like Tansley someday when I grow up.
I don't know that they want to be anything like me. Yeah. So I think from a mentorship standpoint, what has been really amazing is that, first of all, I've had so many humans that were willing to invest in me and walk with me and take my phone call on really hard days. And I think most importantly, say tough things to me. Mike Neal is one of those people. And I tell a lot of stories. In fact, in my interview, I told a story about Mike when one of the things I wanted to get better at was speaking, and I was bad at it. And I told him that, and, he did all kinds of events, and he was willing to have me come present because the only way to get better at it is to do it. And I did, and I was terrible. And even though I'd practiced and prepared, I was lousy. And when I finished, he said, yeah, that was bad.
Mike Neal sounds like, to me, my Paul Gentile was your Mike Neal, or is your Mike Neal, right? Like, so who's willing to tell you the tough truth that you need to hear, right?
Yeah.
So,
and what he said was also, what you have got to do is you're passionate about a lot of things. When you speak, you got to come from a place of your passions, because that's the place that you are going to resonate with people. And that was such an important message. And the other thing that I would say is, he and I had what I describe as cushions. I've, in the last year, kind of honed in on my philosophy of leadership. And I talk about this idea of cushions and wings. And when I talk about cushions, it's he and I had known each other for years. We had become friends. I laugh at all his jokes. I knew that he cared about me. We share all kinds of really strong beliefs about credit unions and members. So when he said that to me, it wasn't like a stranger off the street saying that I suck. And so I knew that someone that cared about and loved me was giving me feedback that was going to help me get better. And so that has been so powerful. And then I think I've had other people in my life, like my mom, who is a wonderful mentor, who is always pure cushions, right? I could go out and do something heinous today and she would find the good in it, right? Right. And you've got to have that balance of people who will be there when you need just all the pure honey, and also when you need to hear the stinging truth. And I'm really lucky that I've had people across that spectrum. The other thing that I would say is I've had people that really gave me those opportunities. The synchronicity between John Normando and my last boss, Todd Marksberry, is that they both saw things in me that I didn't quite see in myself and gave me opportunities to lead things that other people might have been like, Tansley Stearns can't do that. And so I've been really lucky that people were willing to take a chance on me when others might not have.
So while it's fresh, if you had one piece of advice for somebody who's, maybe going through that interviewing process today for their first, CEO gig or to lead a credit union, what would it be?
Be you. I think in the interview process, it's really tempting to take all of the polish out and make sure that the apple is super shiny. And I'm not saying that doesn't matter. And what I know at 46 years old is that there are things about me as I lead that I won't compromise on. I believe credit unions have to grow. I believe that we've got to invest mightily. I think we've got to use capital because it's our members' money. I believe we've got to tell our stories. I believe that we've got to journey the member experience and bring that to life in an engaging way. And I believe we got to put humans first. It'd be easy for me to go in and try to tone down all the things about me that might be challenging for some people to hear and talk only about the finances. And then I would get here and people would be like, well, that's not what we ordered. And so I think it matters, even if you don't get the gig, to go in and be fully who you are, because once you get here, it's going to be hard. And it will be easier knowing that you are in a place where they wanted precisely who you are.
Any tips or hacks as a leader yourself? How do you, I don't want to say allow, that's not the word I'm looking for, but how do you promote your team to be their true self, their best self?
I think, first of all, simply saying it, them seeing me do it, right? If you look around my office, I've got Miss Pac-Man here behind me. I've got all my albums over in that corner. You walk into this office and people are like, what is happening? I've got Dave Matthews.
I see Dave behind you. So.
And that's quirky. And that is a signal that this is who I am. Please get to know me. And I wish to get to know you. And the more that is something that people see, the more they're willing to take a risk and do it. One of the first changes I made when I got here was to the dress code. And our chief people officer, Kathy, who's a rock star, she's like, why are we starting with that? That's not that important. But here's why it's important, because it does just what you and I are talking about. The signal to the team and the words to the team is, please come as you are. I want you to be who you are. Our members will love who you are. And the differences between us are the reasons that we're going to be even better. And clothes are a way that we bring that to life. And so that sounds really small, but it's a super big deal because it invites people to begin that journey of trust and really demonstrating, this is who I am, and please get to know me better.
I love that. There's so many rabbit holes that are opening up here, but I'm going to probably circle back to them because I love talking to you about, and I would feel bad if I didn't pick your brain about it, but I feel like you have such a great perspective on the credit union movement overall, right? So I do want to kind of ask a couple credit union questions here.
Let's
We'll get back to
the
leadership and the fun stuff. So you mentioned from your past, but then, working at Filene and being able to travel all across the country and seeing just the insides of a ton of credit unions. And now, over the past few years, you've spent time building credit unions, right? Directly in the communities. I guess the question I would have is what's one of the bigger issues or challenges that credit unions are facing today that you think we all need to be addressing? And then on the flip side, because I like to keep things really happy too, what has you most excited about your credit union and also as our industry as a whole?
For sure. In terms of your first question, I think that the thing we've got to really guard against is complicity.
Okay.
We are very comfortable, right? There's reason for that comfort. We've done good work and we have to challenge ourselves to do better. The statistic I always come back to is my alma mater puts out this research annually about service levels, and the banks have done better than us a couple of years running. And when I talk about that, I get a lot of pushback from other credit union leaders that are like, well, that's just not true. Or here's all these reasons to say that's not accurate. And what I worry about is that we're very good at excusing some of the signs that there are challenges for us if we don't address some of what's happening. And to me, the underpinnings of that service study are that service isn't what we defined it as in 1980. It is truly experience, and it's digital, and it is in person. It's all the ways that comes together. And it's not enough to just be kind and generous. Of course, we have to be kind and generous. And they got to love our digital experience. And that digital experience has to connect with the in-person experience. And we can't wait anymore to bring that to life. And it's not enough to say that the people who got us here love us. Of course they do. And what about the Mackenzies of the world? My daughter, she's been swiping an iPad since she was 1. And we got to make sure our experience is ready for her as well.
Whether it's Mackenzie or you or I, we're similar age, or our parents, right? Like we've all, I think the Amazons and the everything else of the world have made us realize that there's a certain experience that's just table stakes at this point. So your credit union experience can't be tougher. I mean, so yeah, no, I love that. I love this show because I get to just pick people's brains like yours. And many of the questions are, those scratch my own itch ones about leadership. Last year, I heard this question on a podcast and I absolutely loved it. But what's the greatest investment that you made in your career? The example that I give that was on that podcast was Warren Buffett says it was the Dale Carnegie course.
Yeah.
Is there something like that you can think of that you're like, wow, that really was transformational for me?
Yeah, without question. Becoming an I3er. I was in my mid-20s when I raised my hand for that. There was a little article in one of our trade publications to apply. I was in the second round of folks. And first of all, I had no idea who Filene was.
Right.
And my first meeting, I can't tell you, I stood in a corner. I mean, I was so humbled by the brilliance in that room. I mean, you think about the people that were there. It was, Jeff York and Jeff Klein and Tom Booz, and, the list goes on of these humans that are brilliant people. Mark Meyer, of course, leading it. And, Mark had been charged at that time to be responsible for innovation for the industry.
Right. Yeah.
and now I'm standing with these people who are 10 times smarter than me and really demonstrating their brilliance. And I was really lucky to be exposed to that early. And the truth is, those connections are the path of my life now, right? You think about my relationship with Mark was a big part of how I eventually came to work at Filene. And, my relationship with Todd, who I eventually met through I3, was a part of how I got to Canvas. And so, I know sometimes people think, well, I don't know, how much does it matter that I'm out and investing in these things? And to me, the learning is certainly an important part of it, but those connections that you make and then the maintenance of those, right? Because it's not enough to go and just attend, but it's about the fact that you reach back out later and ask a question of that person and see them again at GAC and learn together. And, and the great news is for me now in the seat that I'm in, I have the opportunity to do that with people that I've worked with over time. Elri Armaza, who's now here, Daniel Milner, who's here. These are people that I've dreamt about what we could do as we build a team. And we've got human beings here at CFCU that have already made it great. And to be able to combine that with external voices gives us a recipe for a really bright future.
I'd like to ask you a question about that, the building of the team, right? Like that senior leadership team. We talk a lot about culture, maybe even more in my house since, Jill's in the people business. But if we take that back to the beginning, as you're bringing your team, you talk about like bringing in some external thought, but also the internal thought that's made the credit union so great. What are you looking for, trying to find when you're putting, let's just say, your executive team together? Because my guess is that flows through the whole organization once that happens. Are there characteristics you're looking for? Is there something that is like, okay, this is who I want to do this with?
Yeah. So in my first week, one of my dear friends, Tiffany Litcher, came in and we spent time as an executive team working on our leadership charter. And I had people here ask me again, why are you spending time your first week doing that? Why is that a priority? And it goes just to your question, which is, for me, it's not about any one individual. although there are individual talents that matter deeply. Art Beard, who runs IT for us, he's got to have some technical acumen that matters deeply.
Right.
And most importantly, I don't want any brilliant jerks on this team. It's not acceptable at this credit union to be amazingly talented around a skill set and treat people poorly. And that has to start with our leadership team. And then in addition to that, as we build the team together, it's about the dynamic of that team. And so, one of the things as I hired Danielle for a chief experience officer, we've got a lot of introverts. So it's me and a whole bunch of introverts.
That's funny.
And I was like, we need someone else that's got a little bit of extroversion. And so
as an introvert myself, those first couple of weeks, the people had to go home and just like, I need to take a nap. There's so much energy here.
Yeah.
So.
And so, thinking about how you build that dynamic in total is so important because, one change on the team, it's a whole new team. And so I think for us, it's about, how do we come together with curiosity, which matters so deeply, a desire to keep learning. And truly, I want people on this team who want to change the world because that's how big it is. When you think about the work that we're doing, it is not mundane. It is not simple. It's gritty and hard. And it's exciting because we are going to transform financial services. And so people that want to do that every day, those are the kind of people I want to be around.
Again, so many rabbit holes to go down here. I'm going to jump through one because this was one that popped into my head as you were saying that. So no jerks on the team. Any tricks you've found to, I guess, weed those out in the interview process when you're looking for somebody here? Like, we can all find out about the jerk once we've been working for them for a while, but how do you make sure that they don't come in?
I think that hiring is this beautiful combination of art and science. And so I don't know that there is any one trick because all of us have skinned our knees on this, including me. What I do think is true is that when you talk about that very openly, and then you start to ask questions about how people engage on teams, the ways that they bring their ideas to life, the challenges that they've faced, people pretty quickly that are more about self than they are other have a hard time hiding that. And that's a real big signal to me that it's just not as good a fit here as it might be somewhere else. Because the truth is, in some organizations, that's great news, right? And that's the way that you function. It just isn't a fit here.
So another rabbit hole, changing the world. I guess, so my question, this may be a reach, but it was kind of bouncing around in my head, my monkey mind here. Like what work looks like. You talked about changing the dress code when you came in. What does a career in credit unions look like to you 5 years from now, maybe when your daughter graduates? Like, how do we attract that top talent and I guess, how do we tell our story so that people know that they can come in and change the world in credit unions? So, kind of a scattered question, but what does that career look like in credit unions 5 or 10 years from now?
And that's the story that we have to tell. We so typically are like, well, the way that you begin here is that you are a teller, and then you may become a assistant branch manager, and then maybe a branch manager and a retail director. And I think we're so linear in the way that we talk about progression, and that there's nothing wrong with the progression I just described. It's awesome. And I think that there's a leap that so many of us can make. And I think it is much less about subject matter expertise and more about this is a place where you come to learn. And when you do that, the sky's the limit about what the gig is. I'm much less about what the title is or what you've done before, but are you super curious? When I hired Elry at Canvas, I know that there were a lot of scratching the head around like, well, he's a research guy. Why would we bring him in to do marketing? And I love the unusual talent and taking bets on people that are gritty and driven and curious and here to serve. And, Elry's such a great example of somebody that can bring something to marketing as a researcher that's the discipline that can get credit unions to take marketing seriously. And so, I think the story, and answer to your question, is about the fact that the sky's the limit here. If you want to go someplace where you can grow and try new things and help us to make people's lives better, this is the place to come.
I love it. Now that kind of to get back to the team, like I'll come back out of my rabbit hole here for a second. How do you give feedback when you're allowing people to grow? Sometimes there are going to be mistakes made, right? Like that we hopefully learn from. When you run across that situation where maybe things didn't go as well, how do you give feedback to your team members?
So I'm going to come back to your question, and then I'm going to say that it starts with that cushion. So when we talk about cushions here, I'm really serious about the fact that we have to build relationships. We have to get to know one another. We have to care about each other, both here at work and externally. And that foundation allows for feedback. You know, where feedback I think is really awful is when it is cold and callous and doesn't care about the human being. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't give really tough feedback and very direct feedback, and I'm super transparent. And what people know is that every day I'm going to catch them doing it right with the things that are going really well. And then when there is a time to say, hey, we skinned our knee, let's talk about how that happened, it's a much different bit of feedback because it doesn't come from a place of, yikes, I'm scared. It comes from a place of, okay, here's someone who cares about me, who's going to help me be better. It's the Mike story, right? He was super direct. There was nothing at all that was sugarcoated. And it wasn't that it was easy for me to hear. I had a tough night that night, and I'm better because of it. But it worked because there was a foundation of that cushion. And so directness and transparency, but only in combination with that cushion and relationship.
So this question, I added it this year, and it really was because of like you and I probably grew up reading many of the same leadership books and things like that, you know. But my question is today, I think back to a lot of those books. Like, what do you think makes a good CEO today? As we're more, I'd like to think that most organizations are moving to be more people focused, right? And realizing that our whole self is a thing, right? Not just our work self. And that seems very different than maybe the Jack Welch style of leadership we were brought up on, right? Like, so to you today, you know, 2022 and beyond, what do you think, you know, makes a good CEO?
Two things: people first and vision. You know, the person in this seat has to help the organization see well beyond today, right? Because for the average person that's coming in, you know, if I'm responsible for ACH, I'm probably not, as I walk in, thinking about, you know, what are human beings going to need in 2030, and how are we going to shift our delivery model, and how are we going to tell our story? They're thinking about, okay, so how can I get this done? Because I'm responsible for pizza tonight and getting my kid out to practice and my dog's sick, right? And so my responsibility is to get everybody's head up and looking and dreaming, and then be able to go back down and do that work and come back up again and help our leaders to do that same thing. So vision really matters. And that's got to be coupled with people first. I think the things that we used to call soft stuff, and I'm over saying it's soft skills because the hardest stuff we do is the thing that is transformational for organizations. Because when you know that you are coming here to a place where people care about you, where you matter first, you're going to put our members first every single time. And what I have to tell you is that's hard, because that also means that we're going to be tough in conversations where people are skinning their knees or they're mailing it in and they're not focused on our members, because we've got to continue to be even stronger in our performance because the work's that important.
One more question on leadership. Actually, I have a couple, but this one I did want to ask you because I think of you as being an innovative leader, and you've talked about innovation and growth as mandatory, right? One of the toughest things for me to learn, and I'm not sure I'm still good at it, was when something isn't working, to not just try to make it work more. So like anything, when you realize that great idea, maybe people just aren't ready for it, or maybe it wasn't that great of an idea after all. How do you kill a project? How do you put those resources where they, you know, can do more? Is there any hacks you've learned around the way? Maybe you can teach me something today. So,
you know, I think it's just calling it. And I think it is for the team starting to learn where those gates are around, okay, we're not going to triple down on this. It's also, I think, so important that if you are the ideator, that you've got people around you who are willing to tell you when something's bullshit, because, you know, we get so married to our own ideas that it's hard to sometimes kill our own. So having somebody around you who's there to say, okay, well, we've tripled down on this and where is it headed? And so I think it's about having a good team, and it's about being able to show that you're willing to do it. Because I think particularly in my seat right now, what you have to continue to be aware of and remind yourself every day is that you've got more power than it feels like you have. And people every day around you are wondering, am I going to keep my job? If I screw something up, what's she going to do? What's the consequence going to be? And so when you go through something that doesn't work and you demonstrate that you're going to kill it, and that unless it was egregious, people are going to come back the next day, that is the way that people will then continue to kill things.
I was excited to ask you this question because somebody that we both know, I remember a few years ago having conversations with her when she first became a CEO. She was very successful in our industry. And in her previous position at that senior leadership, she was a part of the board meetings and things like that. But when she became the CEO, when you talk about the power from the organization sense, you also have this direct line to your board as well above you, right? Any surprises in the first 100 days about what it feels like to be sitting in that? I don't want to say no person's land, but you know what I mean? Like in between, both parts of the organization. And any tips for the person out there, I guess, again, who maybe is coming up into this when it's like, what's it like to actually to be that point contact of the board all the time? Any thoughts there?
Yeah. So I think in terms of surprises, it's funny because so many people in my life who have been CEOs, and I'm really lucky to have so many friends that have that role, have said to me, be careful what you wish for. And no matter what you've done before that, you've not done this. And, I could at times be a little impatient with that advice and was like, yeah.
Right.
And I would say to you, it's very true. There is not a job like this. And that whole notion of lonely at the top sounds so trite, and it's super true, right? And it's true because it's a privilege, right? It's a privilege to be in this seat. It's an honor to be in this seat. There's no crying in baseball. And it's really hard, right? The weight that I feel, the responsibility that I feel for 320 humans, for all of our members, for their financial future, for the community that we serve, and to not screw this thing up.
Right.
I'm committed to the board that I believe in. And so, there's a heaviness to that. And so I think in terms of advice, have good humans around you. And I think in terms of the board, it's about building relationships. The truth is, I have 9 bosses now.
Yep. Right. I think it was Chuck Fagan very early on the podcast who was like, you become CEO and you get more bosses, right? Like, I mean, it was like before I had 1 boss. Now I have 9, right? So, yeah.
That's right. And the truth is, human beings are human beings, and, I've spent a lot of my first 100 days making sure that 320 people here had the chance to talk with me if they wished to. And then I got to know them and hear their voice, and that would inform our strategy. And the same is true for our board. I was having a conversation with our board chair, and one of the things we were talking about is that, for me, it's been over 100 days. For them, it's been 3, because they've seen me for 3 board meetings, right? And when you think about change leadership, it is about how you help people, because no matter how much you are an innovator or you love change for all of us as human beings is hard. I love change, but, coming here and moving to Michigan, which is my home state and I love, I didn't have my Peloton until 30 days ago, and I didn't know where some of my clothes were. And, all of that's so silly, but those everyday things that bring us comfort, when they are disrupted, and that's what I've done. I've disrupted that for everybody here. It's hard. And so again, building relationships, helping people get to know you is such a huge part of how you get through that journey together.
Okay, one more. I've got one more on this one before the rapid fire questions, but I still, now you're sparking something else in me. As another person, I like change. Like, change lights me up, but I don't want to say that we're abnormal in our love of change. Any tips, hacks, like whether it's the board member or to, like, you're coming into an organization on, and I think this just goes out to anybody in a leadership position, to bring people along in that change. Like, part of being the leader is, hopefully getting the buy-in of others into the vision, right? Like, so any, I guess, final words of Tansley wisdom on how to get people to change or to buy into the change. How about that? No, we're not trying to change people, but yeah.
Well, one of my favorite stories from my early days here is, I've been talking for years, but very acutely as I first arrived, about impossible things, and that we are going to make impossible things happen here at Community Financial. And I had one of my leaders ask me, you keep saying impossible things. You do know that impossible means that those things can't happen, right?
My guess is that's not the first time somebody said that to you before. I mean, I'm sure you had an answer. So
yes.
Oh, no.
And so to your question, what I said is thank you, first of all, for asking. I'm so thrilled because I'm sure others are wondering. And because that's my job. Because if I say impossible, a year from now, we're going to get to pretty cool. And maybe 5 years from now, we get to great. And by the time we retire, maybe we do get to impossible. My job is to set the bar really high, to have us dream as boldly as we can, knowing that it's going to take time and we're not going to get there right away. So I think the role is about bringing people along because what they see is so amazing that they want to get there.
I absolutely love it. Okay, before we hit the rapid fire questions, is there anything that you hoped I was going to ask you that you want to make sure you talk about today?
Ooh, that's such a good question. Well, what I would say is this, and I say this not only because I know that you care about her deeply, but I want to say that Humanity and Jill are doing amazing work on behalf of credit unions. Of course, I'm very biased because she was the recruiter that helped me to get to this seat. And, that job is a tough one, and she's doing amazing work to help to make sure that diverse candidates are a part of the future of our industry. And it's important to me that, in particular, women leaders have those opportunities. And so I'm grateful to Jill. You gotta say that.
well, we love that. So it's been an absolute privilege and a blast, quite honestly, to watch it from behind the curtains. Right, it is an amazing thing, and she has made me much smarter and a better human because of it. So I appreciate that. It's a good way to move on. All right, so we're gonna have a little fun with the rapid fire questions. I had to put some new ones in because I didn't want to ask you the same thing as before, even though it's been a while. But people can go back and listen to the first one if they'd like. What was the first job you ever had?
First job I ever had was probably babysitting.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Made your first buck babysitting. That's awesome. When was the last time, either personally or professionally, you were amazed?
Oh, yesterday.
Yeah. What amazed you?
The human beings here. It's really fun to see, particularly people here that have been here a very long time, that come in and say to me, I'm really excited about what we're doing. And every day I'm a little more excited about it. And that's fantastic.
That is amazing. Is there something that Tansley's currently working on herself on that you want to get better at?
Oh,
what's the self-growth thing today, or the priority?
So many things.
Well, a constant learner and grower. It's a good thing, right?
Yeah. I think that I'm really working hard to figure out how I create space in my day, right? I'm a really hyper organized person. I live my life by schedule. I felt this a little bit in my last years at Canvas, but it's acute here that there has to be white space in my day. It can't be block to block to block because people need to walk in here. I need to think, and getting better at creating that is something that takes discipline for me and is really hard.
My favorite thing in the world is space on a calendar that just isn't filled up. And to me, I'm like, no, that can't be filled.
And to let you know, our CFO is auctioning off time when he sees it on my calendar. That's how bad it is. So.
That's how bad. Oh, that's funny. Auctioning off the time. You're like, no, that time is taken.
That's right.
Space is okay. So I've found this kind of ties into the space and creating the space, not only professionally, but for personal things as well. You've got a beautiful family. Often, I think leaders, and when people get to that CEO role or leading an organization, sometimes that work, that schedule can be at the detriment of the personal experience outside of work. Anything you've picked up along the way to make sure that you're balancing that, the both sides of life, they all tie together, right? As humans. And you mention it a lot when you talk about the folks on your team. How about for you?
Yeah. So, I would give you an example this week. So we had an offsite with our leadership team on Tuesday. It was a really important day for us. And my daughter had a cross country meet that afternoon, and we weren't done socializing as a leadership team. And I knew I had to go. And when I left the house that morning, I had said to Mackenzie, I don't know if I'll be there. And she gave me this look that's like the heartbreaking twist in your, in your heart. And I walked around once and then I walked around twice and I said to myself, all right, you are going to walk out this door and go to a cross country meet and you're going to fight against this desire to stay because you've got to do this. And it doesn't make you less of a leader. In fact, it's setting a good example that we're going to have both sides of our lives. And I did. And I got there in time to watch her run and get second place. And
go Mackenzie.
Yes. And so it takes discipline to be good at your personal life too. And I would also just add, Randy, that I would say this to you. I've been really bad at having a full life at times. And getting this job has helped me to see how much I want all of it. And to make sure that I go see Dave play more and make sure that Mackenzie and I are out having fun together. And both things matter.
Absolutely. Well, you deserve it all. So what's the best piece of advice you ever received and who gave it to you?
Best piece of advice is really hard. But the thing that comes top of mind for me comes from Canvas and Todd Marksberry, which is others before self. You know, I think as a leader, demonstrating that every day and that humility is a critical part of how you bring that out in others as well.
So this question comes from Chairman Harper at the NCUA.
Ooh, all right. Very serious.
Yep. Who plays you in a movie or biopic about your life?
Oh my God. Oh my gosh. I have no idea. I don't even know that I know the names of enough people to come up with that. I'm just going to go with Mackenzie plays me when she grows up.
Oh, there you go. That's amazing. Getting her work already. So is there something you're currently reading or a book that you think everybody should check out?
Oh my gosh. So the book that I would recommend is A CEO Only Does Three Things. I read it before I got the gig and it's a really good, what I really took from it is there is a big shift that you make as you move into this seat and your focus is different than any other role that you've had. And narrowing that focus and having that discipline matters because it's easy to want to go into the details of everything else that you were practiced at before.
I'm going to have to check that out. Last question for you. Any final thoughts you'd like to share or asks of our listeners out there today?
Yeah. Please keep dreaming boldly. The work that this industry does matters so much for human beings' lives. We had Mike Schenk with us this week, and he was telling his story of, why his first auto loan with a credit union mattered. And it wasn't anything other than it helped him in his career. And think about that, right? We often think about auto loans as being so simple. And his story was so poignant to me because these loans that we do, the savings we help people create, they are life-changing to people. So make sure people are engaged with us and keep dreaming boldly about what we can do.
There you go. That's a perfect way to wrap this up. Thank you so much again, my friend, for being on the show. I can't wait for our paths to cross again soon. We'll link to everything we talked about today in the show notes. What's the best way for people to reach you if they have more questions or want to get in touch? LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great. My email is tansley@cfcu.org.
We'll link to all of that in the show notes. Thank you again. A few things before we go. Make sure to check out Elan Credit Card in the show notes. Their digital technology, industry-leading rewards product, and commitment to credit unions make them a great partner for the show. And I'm so grateful for their support to allow me to have this much fun doing what I do. Please also subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast players. We're on them all. If you're looking for a book mention, like the one Tansley mentioned, a quick Google search of the CUInsight Experience podcast book list, and your next read is on the way from Amazon. Last but certainly not least, thank all of you for listening. Y'all rock, and I appreciate the kind words that come in about the show. And I hope to see you all soon. Be well, friends.